Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the Public Participation Bill, National Assembly Bill number 44 of 2025, be now read a second time. Mr. Speaker, allow me first to thank the Honorable Jane Kagiri for the indulgence. Mr. Speaker, this Public Participation Bill is one that has been long overdue. It is timely. It is one which has been required by judicial edict. It is one which has been demanded by the public. It is one which has been encouraged by the Public Participation Organization, Public Benefits Organization, and it is one that has been promised by no less a person than yourself, Mr. Speaker. Beyond Article 118 that most of us are familiar with in public participation, this bill goes to the various public offices that would be required to do public participation. And therefore, the objects capture Article 1, Article 10, Article 69, Article 184, and Article 232, in addition to Article 118. Mr. Speaker, this bill, although promoted by the Honorable Samuel Chepkonga and myself, is one that has benefited immensely from various drafts before that. Mr. Speaker, you'll recall that there have been various drafts on public participation bills by private members. There has been a draft by the Attorney General, and all these drafts were then brought together under the legislative caucus of this assembly. Mr. Speaker, you'll recall that this caucus is one that was put together by yourself and has been immensely beneficial to this House in a variety of ways. In terms of overview, Mr. Speaker, first, this bill seeks to put a framework, but it's a minimalist framework, a basic framework for public participation without being overly prescriptive. It covers a number of areas. One, it covers what we call the responsible authorities. The responsible authority being each office that would be required by law to undertake public participation, be it a county office, be it the judiciary, be it parliament. And it goes ahead to designate who in that institution would be held responsible if public participation is not done. This bill gives general guidelines and requires a responsible authority to now also develop its own unique guidelines, because public participation as done by the county cannot be the same as done by national government or as done by the local chief. So each office then must designate its own guidelines and regulations that will guide it accordingly. It requires that before public participation there must be sufficient notice. The documents on which the public's view is required must be available in time and in a language that is easily understood where that public participation is taking place. It also requires access to the documents and access to persons, including persons with disability. Mr. Speaker, it addresses a very fundamental question that the public raised: meaningful public participation. There was immense complaints, especially on the part of county governments, that they do salutary public participation that is artificial in terms of who attends, in terms of what they say, and in terms of feedback. Mr. Speaker, this bill also seeks to cure something that we have had to suffer. Where a particular bill comes to the National Assembly, we have to do public participation, it goes to the Senate, they have to do it also. And so it provides that where either house has done meaningful public participation, you do not need to repeat it. And Mr. Speaker, in order to make this prescriptive and serious, this bill proposes criminal penalty. And the criminal penalty, where you fail to undertake public participation, is you'd be fined up to 500,000 Kenya shillings. Once it was published, Mr. Speaker, there was an advert in the papers, and immediately there was an avalanche of views that were sent by way of memoranda to this House. That was before we even undertook the countrywide, public engagements that we did. Mr. Speaker, I want to report to you that once it was committed to the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, chaired by the Honorable George Murugara, deputized by the Honorable Mwengi Mutuse. The committee did a very good job of engaging the promoters and then divided themselves into 3 separate groups, and in 1 week covered the majority of the counties in this republic. In that exercise, the committee engaged with many groups, and they are all captured in the preface of the report in their thousands, so that in addition to what was received earlier, Kenyans gave their views robustly on the public participation bill. And the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee benefited immensely, as will be explained by the chair shortly, on a number of things. They were able to make proposals on how to recapture the objects of the bill. They were able to re-emphasize the place of sovereignty of the people on the bill. They were able to emphasize that public participation must be a civic duty, and it must not be something for which anyone expects to be paid. Because if that happens, then it becomes a form of corruption and doctored. They were able to give feedback, Mr. Speaker, on the need to simplify the language and adhere to the wording of the Constitution, not just to print things in English and or Swahili, but to include Kenyan Sign Language. They were able to emphasize on the need for accessibility. The irony of it, Mr. Speaker, is that there are places we went to as a committee, and our committee has 2 members who are living with disability, and they could not access the very place for public participation on the public participation bill. And so that has been re-emphasized. They were able to emphasize on the mechanisms of giving feedback so that the people can know whether their views were considered, and if they were, why they were rejected if they were not adopted. They were able to insist that any public participation exercise must have the assurance of Article 35, that there's freedom of expression and you will not be vilified or victimized because of what you say during public participation. They were able to say, Mr. Speaker, that in their opinion, the penalty of 500,000 is not even sufficient. They wanted the amount increased, and they wanted the alternative of a jail term. And they were able to say, Mr. Speaker, that at the end of the day, they would still want the court to have the last say on whether that public participation was meaningful or not meaningful, and therefore to be declared void or otherwise. Overall, Mr. Speaker, it is our opinion as the sponsors, and it is the opinion of the committee, that this bill is long overdue. Members should robustly participate on improving it. A lot of the things that one might see on the original draft will have been amended during the committee stage, and the amendments as proposed are actually contained on the last 3 pages of the report. There's a robust report which I urge members to read in all its 80 pages. Mr. Speaker, with your permission, I would beg to move and ask that the Honorable George Murugara second. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.